Hi, and welcome to the Animal Training Academy podcast show, the show for animal training and behaviour nerds, where I, Ryan Cartledge, interview the world's most proficient animal training and behaviour geeks. We're absolutely thrilled and grateful to have you here with us today. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on whatever you're listening to this on so that you don't miss a single episode. Each episode of this show is brought to you on behalf of the ATA membership. And if you like the conversations in this episode, then you're invited to continue them with like-minded behaviour nerds within the membership area, which you can find out more about at www.animaltrainingacademy.com. Once part of the ATA tribe, you'll get access to twice monthly live web classes, the back catalogue of previous web class replays, plus a huge library of videos and projects to help problem solve your training challenges. Plus, we're a sociable bunch with an exclusive private Facebook group and forum areas. It's like a Netflix social media platform for animal behaviour geeks. But we will get started on today's episode where we will be talking to one Marjie Alonso. Marjie CDBC, CPDTKA, KPACTP is the Executive Director of the IAABC, the International Association of Animal Behaviour Consultants. She was a professional dog trainer and behaviour consultant and owner of City Dog Training in Somerville, MA for decades. She served as training director and behavioural consultant for the New England Dog Training Club, the oldest AKC club in the US, and as a member of the American Humane Association's Advisory Board for Companion Animal Behaviour and Training, as well as the Fair Free Advisory Group for Training and Behaviour. Marjie is the co-founder of the Somerville Foundation for Animals, which is the umbrella non-profit for Every Pet Counts, providing free veterinary care to pets of homeless veterans, and the Somerville Dog Festival, a huge annual outdoor event that raises funds for the Somerville Pet Food Bank. She is past director of several non-profits, including Invisible Somerville and the Institute for Social Engagement, which founded Vote Remote, an ongoing project to help college students get their votes counted. Without further ado, it's my very great pleasure to welcome Marjie Alonso to the show today. She's patiently waiting by. Marjie Alonso, how are you doing?
I'm fascinated by all of my history and letters. I just feel like I need more of them now. Well, thank you.
Hey, I know things are very busy. Your days are very full over there in the States at the moment. We're going to talk about why a little bit later in the show, but just want to start off by sharing our attitude of gratitude and saying thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come and hang out with us here at Animal Training Academy. It's very appreciated.
Right back at you. Thank you for taking the time.
Pleasure. Let's dive straight in, shall we, to the first question. And Marjie, I'm curious to learn or to unpack a little bit more of that bio that we just shared. Can you take the listeners of the show back to where you got started, where you first learned about positive reinforcement, animal training, and share some stories with us?
So, back just after fire was invented, I was interested in dog training. In the late 1970s, I was living in Manhattan in New York City, and I decided I was going to learn how to be a dog trainer. And I found a dog trainer in the Yellow Pages, which was Google at one time, and he turned out to be an ex-canine officer for the Mossad, and I was taking lessons from him a couple of times a week, learning, quite strict training, until the day that he put me in a straw suit in the middle of a large fenced-in field. And I said, why am I doing this? And he said, you'll see. And then out of an attached building rushed this 4,000-pound Doberman who knocked me on my back and knocked the wind out of me and took the bite sleeve off and was running around with it. And I was like, I don't want to be a dog trainer anymore. So I stopped taking lessons with him, but still wanted to be a dog trainer. So I continued training neighbors' dogs, and there was a woman who was an excellent trainer in the apartment building next to mine, and she and I would train our dogs together. And then I very quickly became interested in behavior because I was taking dog training lessons with my dog in Queens and walking in a circle as one did at that time with the dogs. And in front of me was a collie. And suddenly, out of nowhere, as we all say, the collie bit the leg off of a Jack Russell that was in front of him. And I thought, well, that's a whole different kettle of fish. And dog training suddenly became more serious to me. It wasn't what one did, at least in my mind, as a full-time job. I went on to do other careers. I was in the New York Restaurant School at the time. I was a chef and working in gourmet food shops and things like that. But I kept training. I moved back to Boston. I kept training. I had other jobs. I kept training. And then at some point, I adopted two sons, some decades later, and kept training. And all of the other jobs that I had went away because single parenting two babies is not as easy as it sounds. And I could pick my own hours and, continue to work. You said something that's interesting to me, which is you said, how did you learn about positive reinforcement training? And I didn't. I learned about training. And I think that, excuse me, I have allergies even though we're in a pandemic. So we didn't think in terms of positive reinforcement training. We thought in terms of effective training. And the tools weren't what determined one's goodness or badness as a trainer. There were certainly people, as I'm sure there still are, all over the world who just couldn't get enough of sort of abusive behavior. I was never somebody that would ear pinch a dog to get them to take a dumbbell. But I had no problem using prong collars. I never abused a dog. But it became clear as one worked with dogs, as if one noticed dogs, because at that time nobody spoke about things like body language or anything like that. You just looked at the dog and said that dog is happy, unhappy, comfortable, uncomfortable, without even conscious thought. And it was so clear that when one was training in a way that was mutually happy making, if that's not too up with people, a way to put it, a way that was mutually satisfying or gratifying to both the dog and the human, that's what you did more of because that was reinforcing, right? And reinforced behavior tends to repeat. So for those of us that were training, when we saw happier dogs with, more alacrity in their responses and sort of a great willingness or bidability, as we used to call it, coming out, that's what you did more of because those are the laws of behavior. And because of that, over the years, it really wasn't, the whole language of positive reinforcement training, none of that existed as I was doing this. But when I was working at the New England Dog Training Club, I was asked to be training director after a while. And one of the first things I did was say, we got to get rid of all the prong collars. Not because I frankly think that prong collars are so terrible, but because they take away the thought of training for a lot of people. If you have that tool, you don't have to work very hard to learn the language of training with your dog. And that was met with the predictable howls and screams. And, now there will be no dogs that are well trained and you've just ruined America. But it somehow, well, I can't really argue with that part. But the training itself, again, positive reinforcement training was in and of itself reinforcing. And so that became more and more and more what I did and what others did. I certainly didn't do this alone, obviously. And so that's where I got to.
So I was half expecting you to say, I learned some more heavy-handed strategies, and then the next thing I did was go and read Don't Shoot the Dog, but you didn't say that.
No, because I was like 45 when that came out.
But was there can you share any pivotal moments or pieces of information or a book or a person that came along at any point of your journey and kind of shifted how you thought? Or was it not like the definition of exponential that we're learning at the moment in the world?
It just wasn't. I mean, I gravitated toward good trainers. I I feel we've made a huge mistake in our field by focusing on tools, because I don't think that really is what determines good or bad training, although I will never argue that tools that are easier to abuse go away. I would never mind that. But I think I don't have regret for having used the tools I used. I have regret for having made some mistakes with some dogs that involved the tools or not. When I knew better, I did better, sure, but that doesn't really help those dogs. And that goes as far as positive reinforcement training too, when I was not really understanding desensitization and counter conditioning, or not really doing a great job of reading those animals, or not really understanding, behavior consulting didn't exist either. Vet behaviorists didn't exist. None of this stuff existed then. And so there was never a time when I said, Eureka, I'm going to now not do that. We have done something, I think, that's an error, as I said a minute ago, in how we look at training now. When we want dogs or any animal to do something, or to stop barking, right? We don't tell a dog stop barking, because that's ridiculous, and we know it is. And so we tell that animal what to do. What would we like them to do? That is a good DRA for the behavior we dislike, that replaces that behavior with something as good or better than the one we'd like to replace. And that's really what was happening sort of organically with me. Whether or not, when it didn't really matter what tool I had in my hand, I was more and more and more being reinforced by how great it was to train using positive reinforcement training. It felt good. It worked well. The animals and I got along. Not all of them. Some of them wanted to kill me, but that was because I was more and more in behavior. And so I still don't think I have ever had a moment where I went, Eureka, I should have never done this, and this is what I must do. I do think that there's not a lot of question that positive reinforcement-based training is the preferable way to train for a gazillion reasons. But I am without religion about this. I think we've done to people and are doing to people what we would never do to dogs. We're saying, do not use these tools. Do not use punishment. Do not do this. Do not do that, which is terrible training, absolutely appalling training. And somehow we're expecting people to listen and to change their ways by telling them what to not do instead of showing them, what to do. So I never had a eureka moment, because it wasn't a religion and shouldn't be. And because, I was just training, and trying to get better at it each time I did it.
I'm curious to understand more, because if we were to look, and not saying there's any right way of doing things ever, but if we were to look at the reason let's rewind a little bit. The reason I said, I was half expecting you to say, then I read Don't Shoot the Dog, because that story has been played out a lot on the Animal Training Academy podcast show. It is for many trainer a pivotal moment with regards to light bulbs going off in their heads as they read the words on those pages. You've described a very different path to get to where you are now. So one of my the curiosity that I mentioned earlier has to do with trying to understand that a little bit better, like how you operate as a human, and how you absorb information.
There's some that say I do not operate as a human. So. But
well, why do you think? This question you might just go, I have no idea. But why do you think you kind of were able to, with regards to the average story on the Animal Training Academy podcast, you might be an outlier with regards to kind of cruising through and just continually improving and not having a pivotal moment that comes to your mind. What is it about you as a learner, do you think? Does that question make sense? Can you offer an answer to that?
I think that I know that I'm a very non-traditional learner. Excuse me. And so I'm not sure I pay attention very well, honestly, to a lot of things. And like many learners, I think I am naturally seeking something that feels good, or feels successful, or makes me feel that I did something well. So I believe that as I trained, when I trained in ways that were enjoyable and doable for the animal, I became reinforced by their responses. I think it was organic. I don't think it was academic. I don't tend to be a very brutal person at all. I don't, but I absolutely, I hung a dog, not hung, but I pulled up on a prong collar for a dog that was giving me a hard time once. I lived on an 8th floor, walk up, well, the elevator was broken, and I had a 120-pound Great Pyrenees Golden mix named Harvey, and I would get to the 6th floor, and Harvey would run down, and I wasn't very smart, and I kept going back down and getting him, and then herding him back up the stairs, and the third time I was up on the 6th floor and he started to run down, I said, that's enough. And knowing exactly what to do as a trainer, I pulled up on that leash and the prong collar tightened around his neck. And he and I had a standoff. And I saw this dog decide not to kill me. I firmly believe he thought I was too stupid to kill. Right? And I saw him decide, and I let go of his collar, and I asked him to come upstairs with me and gave him my sandwich that we had just gone to the store to get, because I realized I had just done something really shitty. And it had nothing to do with being told anything. It was a moment between me and this dog that I loved. And he was being a brat and I was being an idiot. And in that moment, there was just this visceral gut feeling of what just happened? Why would I do that? So I am not filled with regret at having used a prong or pulled up on it, by his collar. I am grateful that this dog didn't bite me. He had every right to do so. And he was huge at the time. He and I weighed about the same. And so I learned from that moment. I remember that moment so clearly. I remember everything. I remember the smell of that staircase. And at that moment, I said, well, I don't even know if I said, I'll never do that again. It was putting your hand on a stove. Are you going to do that again? No, you don't think to yourself, I won't. You just never do that again. And I think that's what it was like for me. I think that I acknowledged feelings, maybe, between me and an animal in a way that organically moved me towards doing certain things. I am not the best handler I've ever seen. I'm not remotely the best handler I've ever seen. I'm not the best trainer I've ever seen. I'm a pretty good trainer. I am absolutely not brilliant at any of it, but I am good, and I have, I guess, a certain respect for others in my field of vision, human and non. And so I organically moved towards, I believe, what made me feel better. I suppose it's a narcissistic learning curve rather than an academic one. But yeah, I didn't feel good doing that. And I felt great doing other things. And that's what I did.
Could we say organically moved towards something is your way of saying you were reinforced for the things you were doing?
I was reinforced. I was punished when I did that to Harvey in the staircase. It made me feel terrible.
One might argue that's a pivotal moment. Not that you need to have a pivotal moment. You
I
need to have one, Marjie.
That'll be it
you
then.
Need one.
That'll be it.
But you
From
said,
now
you
on.
said that.
Thank God.
You said that you said that you remember the smell of that moment.
I do.
That's pretty powerful, and I think you said earlier that you think we've potentially made a mistake, and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm paraphrasing you here, and I'm often wrong, so please feel free to correct me. You think we've made a mistake in that we think about tools in our industry. And also, and I'm going to go way back now to an email conversation we haven't over there. It's okay to mention that, and once again, pull me up if it's not. But I said, hey, do you want to jump on an ATA podcast show? And you said, I'm not really the trainer. I'm just kind of working in the background, pulling things. But that's something that really got me interested in having you on the podcast show, because you're in a powerful position, I think, with regards to our industry. I view personally from an outside perspective, because I'm not directly. I've made content for the IAABC, but I'm not part of the overall continual picture of day-to-day of the IAABC. But so from the outside perspective, you're head of a very successful organisation that's creating huge ripples around the world and positive change. And you've also at a stage in your life where you're still here. You haven't fallen off. You haven't burnt out. You haven't got
Well, it's Wednesday. Who knows?
It's April 2020, and you were faced with we're going to talk about this later. You were faced with a pandemic, and we're watching the world leaders not deal with and take as much decisive action as you and the IAABC have. We're going to talk about that later, everyone. What exactly I'm talking about. But do you think this kind of, can I label it as a casual approach to learning?
Yes, you could.
Do you think that's put you in a good steed to lead the IAABC? Like, has that helped you become an effective leader?
I think it has helped me see things. I think it has helped me see what is in front of us. It's taken me a long time. I do think I'm a pretty effective leader. There's a very large fan club of people that would like to see me dead. But there are others that would prefer not, which is comforting at night. But it's taken me a long time, I think, to be as effective as I'd like to be, if I am. I'm not sure I am as effective as I'd like to be, but I am not making as many mistakes as rapidly and as identifiably now as I did years ago. And, but I think that one of the things I'm proud of about IAABC, one of the things that is the most difficult about IAABC is that we want to create change rather than demand behavior in order to be a part of the community. It's something that people have a hard time with. It's something that I have a hard time with. I am absolutely 100% in favor of, is doesn't even begin to say. I know and I believe in, not as in a belief, but I live by positive reinforcement as the method by which we train our animals, and hopefully even deal with each other to a large extent. So the fact that I don't faint or cry or even get too upset when people are using other tools, which is not the same as when I'm seeing abuse. But the fact that we want people to not use those tools and show them what we want them to do, instead of cutting them out of our lives and demanding that they do what we want in order to be part of us, is very difficult. That is extremely difficult. You cannot change people by pretending they don't exist. And yet we don't want to accept poor training practices to be inclusive. That's very hard. But I think that my personal take on all this stuff helps with that. For sure. My lack of stridency, I guess, about tools and techniques shouldn't be mistaken for my lack of passion for positive reinforcement-based training. But I don't shun people for not already being in the choir. I think that my proudest moments, I can tell you without question, that my proudest moments are the many stories I've been told by people directly to me saying, before you invited me to IAABC, it's common for me to invite people, here, take a year of membership, to someone that I see that I think looks pretty interesting, but is using things poorly, using tools they don't need to use, or thinking in ways or expressing things in ways that perhaps could use some help, and say, come on in, the water's fine, give it a try, see if that helps. And I know that there are many members that have completely changed how they train because we accepted them and discussed things and offered opportunities to improve or to learn different and better ways, instead of demanding that they be that before they could play with us.
Come on in, the water's fine, give it a try. Maybe that could be the title of this podcast episode. You choose. The other one is, there is a large fan club of people that would like to see me dead.
Yeah, I'd be good with either one.
Hey, I think that something I've learned in the last week. So in the Animal Training Academy membership, I've offered members, we've got roughly 400 to 500 members. I've offered members free one-on-one calls, and we've had about 50 people take me up on that, and we've done about 20 of them so far. Shout out to all the members that I've connected with over the last week. It's been a ton of fun, and I've learned a lot. And I think one of the things I have learned is that in numerous calls, I was asked specifically how I personally navigate my emotions and what those emotions are when I see people using aversives. So it's so interesting to hear you say that your approach is one reason you think that you've been successful. Do you think, because earlier on you referred to some people viewing training tools as a religion. So
They do. Again, it's super important because a lot of times when I talk about this stuff, my death fan club gets larger because it's hard for people to hear that I'm never saying I'm fine with it all. I'm not. I object strenuously to the use of punishment and abuse and intimidation and all the drama words that actually are true, but possibly are not needed to be used constantly when we're talking about tools. I am absolutely 100% confident and comfortable with the fact that a dog can be on a prong collar and not be suffering in any way at all. That doesn't mean that I think we should put every dog on a prong collar. It means that I am looking at something objectively and saying, how is that dog doing? I often say I think in terms of dog rather than dogma. And so, I look at that animal and I say, how's that animal doing? Now, there are plenty of times when I say that animal's not doing well at all. And so if we remove the tools that are more easily abused, we lessen the chances that the unfortunate circumstances are going on. So again, clear the planet of chokes, prongs, and shock collars. I'm happy. But it's not what I focus on. I focus on being better trainers. And if you're a great trainer, tell me the best trainer in the world that you know and hand him or her a shock collar and say, here, use this on that animal. That animal is going to be wonderful. They just don't have to do that. So why would they? But good training is never abusive. And good training is always effective. And good training always saves the animal's life if it's possible to do so. And so, the reasons for using harsh or punishment-based practices don't really exist. But I don't think that we're focusing on the right thing when we are obsessing about tools. And when we're making clubs and sects and churches that focus on being against something. This isn't a way of thinking that I can tolerate, frankly. I think we need to be for something because that's what good training is. We work towards things. We work towards positive reinforcement training. We work towards tool-free training. I think Suzanne Clothier talks about naked dog training. And people naked, maybe, but dog naked, great. Naked dog training should be a goal. I'm hoping that nobody listening to this will run out in the street with no clothes on and train their dog. But I don't know, maybe that'd be fun. But what I'm saying is, tools are not what our focus should be. What our focus should be is how can we be great trainers using positive reinforcement? And if we can do that, the rest of it goes away.
No, this podcast does not promote you running out into the street naked and training your dog. Hey, thank you so much, Marjie, for sharing all of that. Can you share with everyone listening where they can go at the moment to find out more about IAABC and what your organisation that you head offers?
The IAABC at IAABC.org, and it's important everyone know that I did not name this thing. IAABC.org, we offer certification. It's an independent certification, meaning that we don't give a course that leads to it. They are written, rigorous, in-depth certifications in dog, cat, horse, parrot, shelter, dog, horse, and cat. And we're about to come out with a dog training accreditation that will be launching in about a week. And these involve science questions as well as written responses. So we don't just want to know what you know. We want to know what you do with what you know, how you apply what you know. All the best science in the world doesn't tell us how you use it. So we offer these certifications. We have a really strong, supportive community. I over and over again hear people say my favorite list on Facebook is the IAABC list. And that's very gratifying. And we have education as well, an interesting education. There's a lot of great education out there. We offer some of it. And so this guy named Ryan did something for us, and there's a lot of other really, really cool stuff and multi-species stuff. So come take a look.
Awesome, and we'll link to all of that in the show notes as well. Marjie, thanks so much for sharing everything so far. We call that part of the episode People's Behaviour Odysseys. So we really appreciate you sharing yours with us.
I had an odyssey.
And it's got pivotal moments in it. Moving forward, I would really like to talk about accountability and collaboration. When we connected last week to discuss potential topics for this episode, these are two things you expressed as super important for you. Can you share your thoughts on these two words, accountability and collaboration, for the podcast audience? And you discussed sharing 5 important lessons that have helped you achieve these two things for the IAABC.
I think you gave me the number 5. The answerability, I believe, is what I said, but either one is great. Accountability and collaboration are, I think, where we have to go as a field. I think we need to stop the fiefdoms. I think we need to agree on a floor of best practices. It took about 10 years, but finally, along with the CCPDT and APDT and now KPA, we have the Joint Standards of Practice, which are a set of ethics, professional ethics, and operating principles by which we believe all animal training organizations and schools should abide. And they are a floor, so that if we can agree that these basic tenets need to be followed, and you want to add other pledges, other riders, other addendums on, have at it. But can we at least agree that positive reinforcement-based training, that honesty, that answerability, that experience and good practices with clients have to be abided by? I would hope so. And if everybody needs to make their own set of rules, we have no rules. We can't be ethics shopping. We can't be deciding which organization we want because they will or will not care about certain things. And I think that we can't grow up as a field until we do that. The problem with not growing up is that somebody else is going to come along and say, fine, then I'll be the grown-up. And I think that that's probably close to happening right now. I think trainers need to be aware of the fact that as the veterinary field has come more and more into training and behavior, they are more and more interested in controlling what goes on in training and behavior. And that's worldwide. That's not just in the States, and it's not just in the UK, but it's strong in the States and the UK. And so I think that one of the things that we need to realize is that we don't get to have fiefdoms forever. Anybody that doesn't understand that is welcome to read the history of Spain and get back to me. It's a very thick book, but it really kind of describes dog training. And so, if you have too many kingdoms and too many fiefdoms and too many small rule differences that people live and die by, everybody loses. So I think it's very important that we be collaboratively invested in this floor of best practices that we can then build on additionally in any given organization or school. And I think that regulation needs to happen. Regulation needs to happen because that's a consumer protection. And the ability of a client to say, this person said they would teach my dog to fetch a beer and didn't, should exist. But also, this client said they'd teach my service dog. This client said they'd work with my aggressive dog around my children. This trainer said that. We have to be accountable to our clients, and we have to stop setting our own good enough sort of guideline. One of the things that I'm old enough now to say, shake my fist and say, back in my day, we did competition obedience. And everybody was measured by the same ruler. You had to do X behaviors with your dog by a very rigid standard. And you knew if you did it because the judge said you did. And you did it in front of everybody. Everybody kind of was at the same. I mean, there were better trainers and worse trainers. I was one of the worst ones, absolutely. But everybody had the same standard and the same finish line. Now we really have trainers kind of saying, "I am good enough according to me," and then hanging a shingle. And I think that in a non-academic field, it's a trade. If we're going to keep it non-academic, which I think it should be non-academic, which doesn't mean we shouldn't have education, then I think that we have to certainly have regulation that includes consumer protection so that I know that if I hire you or me or someone else to train something, that's what I'm going to get, or I have recourse. We have to be answerable. We can't be professionals if we're not.
When you say we don't have to get into fiefisms,
Fiefdoms.
Fiefdoms.
Little tribe kingdomlets.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm glad you brought that up because we talked about this when we connected, and it's been on my mind ever since. And at Animal Training Academy, the membership calls themselves a tribe.
Yes, and there are many tribes.
And do you think the choice of language there is neutral, beneficial?
I think it depends I think that depends how it is perceived by that tribe. The force-free is a tribe that is as punitive as I can imagine any tribe being very often. Balanced is a tribe, often very punitive as well. There are tribes of different schools. There are tribes of different training. There are trainer gods that people follow or take lessons from, and all of that is fine as long as all of the other tribes are equally considered, I suppose. Which is not to say, again, that balanced training, which used to mean you were just a good trainer, but now it means you use aversive tools, which is not to say that balanced training is, I think, as legitimate or as answerable as positive reinforcement training should be. However, again, effectiveness has to be there. So if the tribes if we don't have answerability, then we have no reason and no right to be defending tribes as better than other tribes, because at the end of the day, prove it. So I think that we have a lot of hate for each other right now, and that's terrible. We have a lot of animosity. We run people off on a rail for, we get complaints that somebody saw a prong collar, a trainer using a prong collar on a dog, and they want them punished. And when we look into it, well, they were teaching a class at a guide dog school about how to get dogs off of prong collars. Do we not want to teach people to not use them? But that trainer would be in jeopardy from other trainers and is shunned because she's allowing people to start where they are and get off those collars. That was very scattered, but I can back up and fill it in if you want. The point being, we're judging each other, we're criticizing each other, we are shunning each other, and that's what tribalism does.
So I've been hijacking the show here for my own development, everyone. Sorry. I've been told that I'm an exclusivist because I've shared photos of Animal Training Academy members. We've done photos of Animal Training Academy members at conferences, and I've invited people into that weren't members because I don't want to be exclusiveness. But then also people in the photo said that they wanted that. They wanted to feel part of something and they wanted that to be exclusive. And I'm also conscious of people's, do you think, because I have no data to back this up, only from my belief that I learned about this from scientific theory, that humans have a desire to belong to some kind of group. And
Go ahead.
Sorry. And no, my question was if that's true, and you can say, no, Ryan, I don't believe that, and explain why, which I'll be really interested to hear your thoughts on. Is there a way that we can kind of satisfy that desire and be inclusive? And what are your tips to the listeners of this show about how they might be able to better satisfy that desire and be inclusive?
So once again, I think I do a poor job. Well, I must do a poor job sometimes of expressing things. but like a monkey typing Shakespeare, if you let me type long enough, I might get a point across clearly. But I think belonging to something is fantastic. I don't think there's anything wrong with belonging to something. We IAABC members should be very proud of the IAABC and what they have created. People in your cohort should as well. People in various schools and other professional organizations. Pride in a group is wonderful. That's different than hate of another group. So I think that families and groups and tribes, in the sense of clusters of people in a community, is a fantastic thing. I think tribalism is a problem when it means warring factions, means that for me to feel like I'm important, you need to not exist. Or I need to make myself feel superior by pointing out how shitty you are. Or you do something I don't believe in, therefore you're bad. For reference, please see every religion and every war ever done, right? So is there anything wrong with religious groups that congregate and no. Is there something wrong when war is waged in the name of that religion? Absolutely. And it's the same thing. I think belonging is crucially important. I think pride in one's community and in what one's group is doing is fantastic. I think using that as an axe is not.
So I want you to keep typing.
Okay, but I need a banana. Okay.
So reframing that then, because I definitely know that it's, I definitely know, let me rephrase that. I definitely feel that that is a challenge for some people. Mm-hmm. And they don't want it to be, but they can't. And their feelings are valid, the feeling of their heart starts racing or their hands get sweaty when they see stuff, and that's real and that's valid for that person. But what are some reframes you can offer us then? Like to me
that speaks of needing to work on oneself.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I do think that if you see and here's where. So, in art and porn, it's impossible to define it. You just know it when you see it, right? And I think abuse is like that too. So some people will see a dog on a prong collar and say that's abuse. And some people will see a dog being kicked and hit and say that's abuse. And so I think that if we look at each animal, each instance, when we're talking about tools, as a study of one, as Susan Friedman often preaches, that helps us. But people can't even hear about tools without getting upset. That's troubling. And I think a lot of the people, and again, I am not promoting the use of these tools. I'm promoting critical thought. I'm promoting 500-foot up vision that says, what is actually happening here? And at the end of the day, let's, for God's sake, use positive reinforcement training. But I think a lot of this is from people that never have touched any of these tools. And they become terrifying. As you say, I mean, people's emotions are valid, but what triggers those emotions may well not be, in the sense that any fear or phobia they're valid to the person. But, if you're terrified of snakes and there's a snake 50 feet away, I don't know that it's the snake that's the problem. And so I think that we have this, I don't know, 15 years now? I have no idea, because things are either 1 year ago or 25 years ago now. But for quite some time now, the training community has sort of continued to divide and divide and divide. And there are people who were brought up on training, that have never been around a lot of the things that they are violently against. And that's the argument I've heard used toward me is, I don't have to be, around a gun to know that shooting someone is bad. Well, that's absolutely true. You don't have to be around a gun to know that shooting someone is bad. But that's not the same as knowing that as being convinced that everyone that has a gun is a monster. I mean, that was the most American statement I could have ever made. But the experience that people have is so this has sort of gone in the wrong direction for me, because I'm not saying now everybody go out and get a shock collar. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's that things that are unknown are the boogeyman often. And I think that is what has caused such strong feelings. And then because they're tribes, they're reinforced for those behaviors of shaking fists and villagers with pitchforks chasing people that they saw with a prong collar on, because that tribe has also shared that feeling of this must be a monster because he or she has X.
So I'm reminded of a conversation with Steve White. And when you said there that things that are unknown are the boogeyman, and he shared something which changed my life. And it was just a story in a podcast show, but it was someone watching a demonstration, and I'm paraphrasing Steve White here, so quote me, not Steve on this. Someone watching a demonstration, and the person was using an aversive tool, and the person next to him said, I wonder why he did that. So I'm curious if curiosity is the behaviours surrounding curiosity are things that we need to, that there would be value in exploring more.
Always. But it's so easy. One of the problems with me, probably, but with these conversations is I am not trying to lead us towards aversive tools. I am just such a believer in working towards something. I can tell you that this is in my DNA. When I was 15, I ran away from home, and I ran away twice. The first time my father came and got me and pulled me by the ear and got me back home. And then as I'm slamming around the house, getting my stuff, or I don't know what was going on at the time. And my mother says, well, she's going to run away again. I said, no, I'm not. I'm running to Rick. And I haven't thought of that in a long time, but now that I say it, I think this is how I'm made. So I don't like to be against things. I like to be for things. And I do not at all mean that in a super happy, sticky, sweet, smiley way. I mean, I am for positive reinforcement training. I am for excellent training. I am for critical thought. I am for the best tool for the best job. I am for saying to somebody, let's try our very best to get the behaviors we need out of this animal using what I know are the best tools and techniques. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to ask a colleague for a consult. And if that doesn't work, it's possible that I may use a tool that is not on my first, second, or third list in order to get what we want for the happiness and health of everyone in the household, animals and people, which is the opposite of saying I'm for these tools. But to me, that's a hugely different perspective than I am against that. I have seen people recommend rehoming an animal rather than use a tool they don't like. That's very sick. And also, how many other trainers did you call in to see if that could be helped? Calling in colleagues is something all of us should do. So I am for positive reinforcement training. I am for critical thought. I am for unified standards that can be improved upon or added to. I am for accountability that says if I take your money and say that I can do this thing, I better be able to do it or you have recourse. I'm for all those things.
Yeah, I think I really like that. How many other trainers have you called in? It makes. I was thinking the same thing as you said it. Mm-hmm. Pivotal moment number 2. Thanks, Rick.
I didn't even know I had pivotal moments. So this podcast is changing my entire life, which is in and of itself a pivotal moment. So this is so meta.
I'm really glad we could have this conversation, and I thank you for being courageous and having it with me. And I think and I don't know if you view yourself as courageous for having it. But I think
stupid is the word that comes to mind.
I'd say courageous.
Okay.
You own that
tomato,
word.
Tomato.
But earlier you said that people have come to you and said just because someone has a gun. Well, I can't remember what it was. I'm totally butchering it. But you listened to the show, remember what Marjie said. So, that suggests to me that you're well rehearsed at having this conversation and you've had it with different people in different contexts. So I'm curious, Do you feel vulnerable having this conversation? How does it make you feel? You
Absolutely.
do? Well, thank you so you are courageous. Thank you. I appreciate you being courageous.
Well, thank you. Remember, I told you about a graph I'm going to send you where as the age goes up, the give a shit goes down. I'm pretty far along that spectrum. But no, I think that I worry for my organization. I worry people will come away with this after 400,000 words of this monkey typing saying IABC is for shock collars. Absolutely not true. We are absolutely not in favor of shock collars or punishment or any of that. I worry that people will say, yeah, deep down, she wants everybody to have a prong on because I said I can see uses for them. And that's what happens a lot, is that things get distorted because of fear or because of preloaded disdain or I don't know. But and also because on Facebook, all opinion is equal. Somebody that's been training for a year and somebody that's been training for 45 years are absolutely equally qualified because it's Facebook. But I think that it needs to be said. I think it needs to be said that we have to be working for things and not working against them, if that makes any sense.
Well, I hope that I definitely haven't got that impression about the IAABC, but I can only speak for myself. I hope that you, the listener of this podcast, come away from this episode with curiosity and a desire to learn more and to build upon yourself. And if you haven't, then please go and listen to all of the other episodes of the ATA podcast show, because it's my desire and my hope that our tribe is one that is curious and is always trying to learn, develop, and put time and energy into those two things and better ourselves. Our tribe's definitely not about casting judgment, rather casting curiosity.
Sounds
I
like
felt
fishing.
that needed.
Thank you.
So I asked for 5 things and I'm going to get it, God damn it. 5 important lessons that have helped you achieve. I used the word accountability. You used a different word. I can't remember what it was. Sorry. And collaboration. So stop the fieftism.
Fiefdoms. I'll write this down for you. I did write down the 5 things because.
What are they then?
The first one,
List
you said 5 important lessons you've learned that have helped you achieve this with the IAABC success or whatever it was. And the first one was never select reply all by mistake. This is like the most important lesson I've ever learned. That was crucial. To be something people can move toward rather than huddling against together is very important. Have we built something at IAABC that people can move toward, that they can grow from, learn from, share their knowledge with others? Yes, I think we have. And I think the proof is in the pudding. We're in over 30 countries. We're not the biggest. We're definitely not the richest, but I think we're pretty influential because of that. I think I've learned to fight for what's right over what's popular. That's been a very expensive lesson for me. You talked about vulnerability of having this conversation. It's real. And I think it's worth it. I think it's worth the social risk. I know that the internet will kill me someday. That's the 4th thing. The internet will kill me someday. And the 5th thing is, and this sounds phony, but it's very real, most people are great, is what I've learned. I have had the honor and pleasure and burden and huge pain in the ass of interacting with thousands of people over the, 12 years that I've been heading the IAABC. And I am astonished by how cool people are overall and how quirky and interesting and giving and caring and invested so many of us are. This is not at all nonsense. It astonishes me over and over again.
I am astonished by how cool people are. Never select reply all. To be something people can move towards. Fight for what's right over what's popular. The internet will kill me someday. Most people are great. I'm sure the listeners of this show are going to benefit from what you've learned from those 5 things, because you've put together something pretty special that's going to be happening pretty soon.
Yeah.
When you've got lemons, make lemonade. Do you want to talk about this for us?
Yes.
Marjie?
I don't know if you've heard about this little pandemic that we have going on. But the IAABC, we had to cancel our conference. And I was upset about canceling it without offering a DRA. I wanted something to give people instead. And Denise Fenzi and I at Fenzi Academy got together. She was having to cancel her camp. And we decided to do something together, which was to team all of our speakers for this massive online event that is happening May 23, 24, 25. And it's 3 18-hour long days because we lost our minds, and then we're like, and we need this. So yeah, 3 18-hour days, 6 a.m. to midnight Pacific time U.S., Saturday, Sunday, Monday, because it's a long weekend in the States, of the most fantastic presenters. And you'll need to go to thelemonadeconference.com to see the lineup. But we decided to do this as inexpensively as possible. And it's, 50-something hours of lectures for $179. And we are giving IAABC members, people that had already signed up for the IAABC conference, and Fenzi Camp people an additional $30 off. And we're giving many, many scholarships, so that $100 off. So many scholarships for this entire thing for $79, because our community is being horribly hit by this pandemic financially. And most of us are not people with a whole lot of money sitting in the bank that we can live off of comfortably for months while this rides out. And Denise and I really wanted to do what we could for our people. And so we did what we could. What we did. We decided to provide people what they value. Hopefully some really great distraction and education, but as absolutely cheaply as possible. It's something like $3.40 a lecture or something like that. And so, it meant a lot to us to be able to do this, and our teams got together and just kind of went. I think I first said to Denise, hey, do you wanna on a Thursday? By Friday, we had a website building. I mean, the will to do this was so huge and so universally, let's see what we can do for our community. It's been very gratifying. Again, these are tribes coming together in the best way, positive reinforcement trainers saying, how can we give to our community? In the best way. So I've spoken a lot of doom and gloom and sort of denigration of tribes today with you, but in fact, this is the best of it, in my opinion, when we have people building something together for the good of our entire field. And I will say that the other thing is that as soon as we canceled, I saw what was happening to our people. And I called in a bunch of people from the internet, from our team, even outsiders, to put together the pandemic handbook. And that is going to be up on our website on the crisis response page by, I believe you said, Ryan, this is airing next week, my Monday. So when you hear this podcast, it should be up on the website or will be momentarily. And it's a large manual on how to do remote consults, how to handle the money. We primarily dealt with money in the U.S., but we'll be adding material to this as the weeks go on. Scripts for speaking to landlords and creditors, scripts for speaking to clients, ways to take in money, how to use remote tech with very specific instructions if you want them. And in addition to that, which I don't know how many, 30, 40, 50 pages long, this thing, we also have the dog trainer's handbook that's also going to be up there, which is a full curriculum of a manners class with instructions or suggestions really on how you can use this with clients. So we kept it simple so that clients could use this handbook to work off of for lessons with an instructor if they want to. So you as a dog trainer could pass this along to your client and say, okay, let's work on skill number 1. You send me a video. We'll meet up on Zoom or on Facebook or whatever it is and go over back and forth. And we have some some things like how to deal with what might be a whole lot of separation anxiety coming when people go back to work and their dogs got used to them being home. And I would like to say that if everybody could please remember what we look like to dogs with masks on our faces, it would be great for the dogs and for us. And so we talk about that too. So this is a resource that we're making public. It's free to the public. Anybody that wants it and can get help from it and maybe comfort from it should go to IAABC.org and look for our crisis response page. And please avail yourselves of it. I hope that it can be helpful. And this huge team of volunteers just got together to make it for us because everybody cares a whole lot that we make it through this as best as possible.
You said Denise and I really wanted to do what we could for our people, so we did what we could. That's literally what you said, and it's true. I saw it. I've seen this document. Everyone, Marjie kindly just showed me via screen share on Zoom here before we pushed record today, and she expressed to me that she's upset that she didn't get it done fast enough. But
Yes.
2.5 weeks, they have compiled something that would take me probably 5 years.
This
to
was
put
IABC
together.
and other. So the Lemonade Conference is us and Fenzi, and that's fantastic. The Pandemic Handbook and the Dog Trainer Handbook is IAABC and other volunteers that have come in. Everybody killed themselves to work on this. And so I'm annoyed that we couldn't get it out in 1 week because people need it, but this is the best we could do without actually killing people. So we got it out. And, if anybody wants to write to me and ask me for, if there's content that could be helpful, please do. It's exec.director@iaabc.org. Not executive, exec, EXEC, director at IAABC.org. We are pulling for everybody here. We are 100% aware of how devastating this is to everyone. It is breaking our hearts.
So there was IAABC, we're the one and only tribe. No, just joking. Exec director.
Yes. We're the good tribe. .org.
So May 23rd, 24th, 25th for the Lemonade Conference. Do you say $179 for 180?
It's $179 for 50-something hours of lecture. It's 3 18-hour days. It's insane. I love the Fenzi people because they're as crazy as we are. And so we were like, yes, and more. Let's do more. They're really great. So, yeah.
You crazy tribal people, not like us calm, collective, focused folk here at Animal Training Academy.
Exactly. We're not sensible like you. The Australians have that reputation.
Thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us today, Marjie. We do have one more question for you before we finish. And I feel like, as I often do when we get to this part of the podcast show, you've already answered it. But is there any final words you want to add here? The question is what you want to see happen over the next 5 to 10 years in the animal training world.
I would like to see the pendulum swing to center in terms of skill, matching I'm hesitant to use the word ethical, but I do believe that positive reinforcement training is the most ethical approach. I don't believe that skill has necessarily kept up with that. I would love to see every trainer out there be the best freaking trainer that they can be by some measure or some measure that we can all count on, and that we do adopt these collective foundational tenets that allow us to be a stronger, more cohesive field. And I think that, if we think of it as a hospital, instead of tribes, we have departments. And so we have this large building, and in it are the different departments. And there's your department and my department. And I'm not interested in what you're doing, and you're not interested in what I'm doing necessarily. It's not what I want to do. That's fine. But we all believe in the same thing, and we are together creating this institution that is excellent. And that's what I'm hoping can happen. I'm hoping that the pieces start to gather and start to unify, because I think that everybody wants to do the very best thing they can. And obviously not everyone agrees on what that is. But I hope that we can start to unify. I hope that we can become a stronger community and that we can adopt these standards upon which we all live and become more answerable.
Pendulum swings towards mutual purpose.
And excellence.
And excellence. I don't think anyone can argue with that. Once again, Marjie, thank you so much for sharing. Just before we do officially wrap up, though, you've mentioned numerous times through the episodes the websites, any social that people can go to find out more and get involved with the IAABC. Can you just remind everyone listening where they can go online?
For the Lemonade Conference, go to thelemonadeconference.com. For IAABC, the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants is what that stands for. Go to IAABC.org. And if you are interested in getting help from our crisis response page that is open to the public, and the manuals, handbooks will be there by the week that you're listening to this. IAABC.org.
Wonderful. And we will, of course, link to all of this in the show notes on the Animal Training Academy website. Marjie, once again, thank you in appreciation for being courageous.
Thank you for having me.
Jumping on the show today. And so from myself, and not just from myself, though, but on behalf of the whole tribe.
Now we have to get, tattoos that say tribe.
From the chief of the ATS, from myself and on behalf of everyone listening, we really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to hang out with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you for doing this.
We do, of course, really appreciate all of you tuning in today as well. And if you have enjoyed this episode and you were interested in carrying on the conversation about working with our animals in the most positive, funnest, choice-rich ways, then as mentioned at the start of this episode, the Animal Training Academy community is waiting for you. Head on over to www.animaltrainingacademy.com and click on the membership button in the main menu to learn more about what members are describing as the Netflix social media platform for behavior geeks. There's something there for absolutely everyone, and we're looking forward to having you join the tribe. That's it for this episode though. We're going to wrap it up there. Thanks again so much everyone for listening. You'll hear from us again soon.